when you don't have that many points of reference,
Yep.
like that's kind of how you set your expectations.
All right. I am incredibly excited to have Amy the Punisher on this morning, Amy Leedham. Just to give you a little background, we've never chatted before. This is our very first time. I had heard of Amy when she wrote a blog post for ProKit, and it was back in January 2021. And I think the title speaks for itself: The Postpartum Experience No One Wants to Read About and Should. And I literally read this and, I'll have Amy share her story, but then I heard Amy on the Morning Shakeout podcast. It told a lot of her background, got to hear a little bit more about her. But I wanted to know about the postpartum story. And so Amy graciously agreed to chat with me this morning. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how we got to this point?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here to talk about this issue specifically. So yeah, my try to keep it a short, but I'm a kind of lifelong athlete, and got into pretty high level trail and ultra running. I don't know, around 2016 maybe. Had a couple of years at the kind of competing at the international level, sponsored by Solomon. Had the incredible honor of being on the U.S. World Championship team in 2018, representing my country at the uh, trail running World Championships in Spain. Um, and then I went through a little bit of an injury period, and then I got pregnant. And basically, I have kind of a history of hip issues. The whole hip pelvic region is pretty complex, and as runners especially, there's just a whole lot going on there. And I was just coming out of recovering from a stress reaction when I got pregnant in 2019. I had my daughter in 2020 at the kind of height of the pandemic in July. Went through very stressful, kind of very isolated pregnancy during the pandemic with kind of really no access to prenatal athletic care. So obviously I was going to my doctor's appointments, but none of the kind of pelvic PT preparation I would have wanted. Ran through a lot of my pregnancy, did some strength training, thought I was feeling pretty good, but kind of just assumed that the aches and pains I was feeling were kind of quote unquote normal. Had my daughter, pretty intense delivery. She came out water breaking to head popping out in under an hour,
Wow.
or just about an hour. And she even got stuck for about 20 minutes. So it was all those things that they say about the first one being really slow are not always true. And yeah, had, I guess, a fairly intense but pretty common birth and initial postpartum experience. And thought I was taking it easy, and started to try to very kind of slowly start to run around 11, 12 weeks postpartum, and kind of things weren't really feeling good. And um, slowly kind of kept getting worse, had a lot of pain in my adductors and pelvic area. And yeah, basically got to this point in January of 2021 where I was let's see, what that would be like 8 or 9 months postpartum, still not able to run, and having gone through months of kind of trying to work with a pelvic PT, but not being able to go as frequently as I wanted because it's out of pocket, and trying to like tag team that with a kind of standard insurance based non
Yeah.
pelvic PT. And ultimately, that combo actually made things worse for me
Oh,
because
wow.
I was like further exacerbating my strength imbalance issues that were causing my problems. And yeah, I kind of thought I had hit rock bottom in January of 2021, and wasn't really sure I was ever going to run again. And just kind of put that story out there because I felt very alone, and kind of thought, I'm an athlete. Like, I thought I was doing kind of mostly the right things, like, but everyone I'm seeing is, joyfully running like 6 weeks
Yeah.
after having a baby and doesn't seem to ever have any problems. And it just felt very frustrating.
What what were the messages that you kind of, or your mindset, I guess, going into pregnancy about what that first little bit of postpartum would look like? Like, did you have voices that you felt like you were connected to, or you felt like you had some sort of direction, or when did it start to feel like you were a little bit lost?
Um, so it's kind of in hindsight, and this is like so embarrassing to admit, but I was like, well, I'm an athlete and I'm pretty in tune with my body. Like, if I do things right, I can maintain fitness throughout pregnancy. And like, yes, there'll be some time off, but like, I was gung ho of going to South Africa in November of 2020 to run like a 50 or 60K trail race, which would have been, I gave birth end of July, so I can't do math this early in the morning, but like
I can't
for
either. It's all good.
I was expecting or hoping at least to
Okay.
be able to do like a pretty serious, very long athletic endeavor in mountains, like 4 or 5 months postpartum. Like that was
Yeah.
my mindset
Okay.
initially.
Fair enough.
Yeah, like the stories that you see mostly are folks like Carrie Goucher, like going back to training 1 week after having her kid. And now, of course, we know the whole story behind that. And she's
Right.
been really open with her experience, and it's great. But like, that's one example. There's so many examples of these high level athletes who return to really high level competition really quite soon after having their kids. And that's kind of the model you see. And I'm not saying I'm a international level athlete of that caliber, but at the same time I'm like, well, like I'm not
You're up
that
there.
far behind. And
Right.
like of course everyone's different, but like when you don't have that many points of reference,
Yep.
like that's kind of how you set your expectations.
Yeah.
And that very quickly it became clear that like that was not going to be me.
Yeah. So for you, like, we get through pregnancy, we have this birth that was not necessarily textbook, super quick. Like, where did you even start? Like, what was the biggest challenge to, one, to get started, and then two, when you realize you're like, I need to find help here, what were the challenges to finding help?
Yeah, so I had a grade 2 tear and episiotomy, so just kind of to put into perspective, like, and that's not like crazy severe, but it's, that's a pretty serious injury to recover from. Um, Part of it is that there's none of that kind of care is covered in like your typical postpartum care. So I had my 6-week follow-up with my OB, and I asked her to check, just kind of, at the time I didn't really know terminology or anything. I asked her to check
Yeah.
for prolapse because that's like the one word I had heard of, and
Right.
was like, I'm kind of concerned about that because, and she's like, well, we don't really do that. And she's like, things keep moving around anyway. So like, even if we
Wow.
found something like, and I got an IUD, so she was all up in there, like could have taken a quick check of stuff, but she was just straight up like, no. And I was at a like international or national level like institute hospital. And so that was kind of like, oh, okay, well, then where do I go?
Yeah.
And I had some friends, athletes in the Bay Area, recommend this one pelvic PT. And so I tried to make an appointment with her, and it took like 4 weeks, I think, to get an appointment. And so then that's just like you're sitting there, really like, I need help now. Like,
Right.
how do I navigate this? And had to wait. And she was good. But ultimately, and she really cared. But I think for whatever reason, it just like her approach just like didn't really sink in or work with me. And because I was also trying to supplement her care with this, like I said, like I'll call him a regular PT
Yeah.
who also really cared. Like this guy in his kind of late 30s, kind of more just like your insurance based kind of typical
Yep.
PT. And like he also really cared and was like really trying to help. But ultimately, my kind of whole midsection area, like all of it, core, pelvic floor, glutes, hips, all of it was so weak and like out of sync that like I had to be taken so much further back down the range of exercises
Yeah.
that the stuff I was doing was actually exacerbating my issues and made it worse. So I developed osteitis pubis,
Oh no.
which like showed up more in the second MRI I had when I was like had been going to PT because the exercise I were doing was like, it wasn't using the muscles it was supposed to use because they were like so out of like turned off or whatever, and just like everything was just completely out of whack.
So were you able to do like stuff around the house and take care of your daughter?
No. So that's the other thing that was like I couldn't lift my daughter without pain. I couldn't wear her and like walk with her.
Yeah.
It was really painful. I couldn't really put her down into her crib, and like now I can actually, which is like two, and she weighs a lot more and I can do it now. But like even when she was really small and didn't weigh very much, like it was just far too much for my system. And so like my husband had to do all of that stuff. Um, and so that was really hard as well. Like I
How,
I was
how,
in constant pain like every single day. Um, even sometimes even just like sitting and like rotating. I remember sitting on the couch actually shortly after I wrote that article in February, watching this trail race that was on TV, and I like rotated to ask my husband something, and like my whole like pelvis hip area was like on like lightning striking, just kind of like excruciating
uh,
pain. And it was so hard. It was like pain every single day, no idea what what to do to make it better, and like no light like at the end of the tunnel. Like no, like I will do any exercise
right.
or not exercise. Like tell me what to do and I will do it, if it, especially if I start to see that incremental progress. But like I saw no progress. Like it was very dark and very hard and very very lonely.
And on top of that, probably not getting the best sleep and,
Yeah.
feeding and all that other stuff. Like
Yeah, and
where's
working, I went
yeah.
back to work in,
Oh gosh.
late December, so yeah, then, like, working full time and
And
all
still in
yeah.
the middle of the pandemic.
Still in the middle of the pandemic, and yeah, I was breastfeeding, I I was very, like, really wanted to make sure I could breastfeed until there were vaccines for kids her age, which there still
Oh
aren't, and
god.
I'm not
Right.
breastfeeding now, but, like, at the time, it was kind of the best thing I could do to protect her, also not going anywhere, which is another thing we did, so
Right.
also very isolating, so, yeah, and then it was very hard, and I had to give up. I had moved on, like, from not only thinking I was ever gonna compete again, but I kind of was starting to get to the point where I was like, "I don't think I'm ever gonna run at all again."
So
Like, if I
what
can get to the point where I can exist pain-free
Oh my
in
gosh.
daily life, I will be good.
So what was the medical field telling you at this point?
Not a whole lot. I have since I've had the kind of previous sports injuries, I had some connections with some really great sports orthopedists at UCSF, who actually were all women, and like also really wanted to help. And one of them, like I'm paraphrasing, but she was like, the whole area is kind of a black box, like, and there's this big disconnect between ortho and pelvic PT.
Yeah.
And she's like, I really wish that it was better connected. She did the best she could. She ordered MRIs to try to kind of find what was going on, and that's how we found the osteitis pubis. But that's not really I mean, you would know better. You can probably explain it better. It's not necessarily easy to know what to do from there or what the root cause is, because there's a couple different things that could cause it, but
Yeah.
like we could see that in the MRI. And yeah, I mean they tried, and that basically the best they could do was prescribe PT, but the PT that I really needed wasn't isn't most practitioners who can really help aren't don't work under the insurance system. As I'm also, you can explain better
Yeah.
than me about why that is, but
That's a
like
whole nother
a whole nother
that's a
episode.
whole
But
nother episode there.
yeah, and so they were
So you're
basically like,
doing
I think you're just kind of weak, and
so you're doing
like
strengthening with both PTs, or what kinds of stuff were they doing?
yeah, so actually, with the pelvic PT, she didn't do a ton of strength. She did some assessment, and like she's like, "Wow, your glutes are extremely weak." Um, but every time I tried to do exercises, like any type of clamshell, it made it worse
Mhm.
because again, I couldn't find my glutes. Like my brain was not connected to my glutes.
Yeah.
Like my glutes were not doing anything. My body was trying to use everything
Everything
else,
else. Yeah.
and that was making it worse.
Yep.
And I couldn't even do early on. I couldn't even do some of the basic, like reconnecting to the pelvic floor exercises.
Mhm.
So I actually had e-stim for the pelvic floor with her to like
That's not fun.
get it going. No, no, it's not fun.
Did
Um,
it work?
it
Did it
did. It
Okay.
did actually. It helped me be able to get to the point where I could do some of those kind of basic, um, yeah, like
Yeah.
360 breathing and actually like feel like contracting and relaxing and kind of get that connection going again. So that worked. But she was like an hour and 20-minute drive away,
Oh
as
gosh.
well as being out of pocket. And so,
And for
um, and,
anybody that doesn't know what e-stim is, basically you put a vaginal probe in, and it puts an electric current through. So essentially, it's contracting those muscles for you, which doesn't feel good. Um, but it can be used to, be proprioception and see where things are in space there. But yeah, I can't even remember the last time I used. I think it's probably been 15 years since I used e-stim.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think like that was another thing. Like this PT was potentially a bit more I don't know,
Traditional.
traditional or old school.
Yeah.
She had worked with some of my other friends that were athletes, but I think she is probably really great with more typical cases.
Yeah.
Like I think every single person who has a baby should have pelvic physical therapy afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think for like the cases that are fairly standard or typical, like she would
The
probably be
basic
really
stuff
helpful.
works.
The
Yeah.
basic stuff
Yeah.
works. But like I needed some very special help,
Yeah.
and I got it, which was
So
amazing.
so let's jump to that. So you put out this blog post, and what's the feedback that you got?
Oh my gosh. Heartbreaking, first of all. Like, I got so many comments on Twitter, public comments on Twitter and Instagram, and then I would say like three times as many private ones on Twitter and Instagram. Those are the two forums that I posted it on. Um, and it was just woman after woman saying, like, A, really supportive, which was amazing, and B, just like, "Oh my gosh, thank you, like, this is me," and, like,
Wow.
how many months or years at the postpartum that they were and where they were at with their attempts at, like, trying to run and the challenges that they were having, and it was just, like, woman after woman, kind of also really struggling and being like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not alone, thank you," and yeah, it was like I said, yeah, it was really
This
great to see the feedback, but
Yeah.
it was so sad to see how common,
I was gonna say
it
it
is.
sounds like a double-edged sword. On one hand, you feel like you're not alone, but on the other hand, you've got people that still haven't found solutions. So where does this put you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was yeah, and I was like, "Oh god." I mean, some people are like, "I'm at 2-year postpartum and I'm still not like, I still have these
Yeah.
kinds of issues." And on the one hand, it's like, "Oh, that's great that I'm not alone." And on the other hand, it's like, "Are
Oh,
you telling me
shit.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
be like this, like,
Yeah.
in a year and a half still? Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh." And the answer is that yes, I am, but not
Yeah.
so better. Um,
But the
and then
good thing that
yeah,
came out of this was
yes. So then several people mentioned Sarah Tanza. She even responded herself, and I was like, I looked her up, and I was like, okay. But she was in Santa Cruz, which is even further. That's like an hour and 40-minute drive from where I
Right.
live. And I was like, I can't do that. And I think I waited like a month and was like even worse pain. And I was like, okay, I have to. And her website, like she was completely full. And I
Yeah.
like sent her this like completely like desperate message begging her on Instagram, and she was so nice and like squeezed me in and yeah, saved me because
Wow.
I yeah, it was a long drive, but not only did she like her emotional the way that she kind of connected with me emotionally is just next level. Like I don't know how she does it because she sees so many patients, and I think she's like that with everybody.
Yeah.
I cried on the first day, and but she like looked me dead in the eyes and she said, "You are going to run again." And she believed it. Like, it's not just
Yeah.
like, and that was the thing I needed to hear. I hadn't heard that, and I didn't believe it at this point. And I think she saw that. And if you're going to get better, like the mental physical connection is
Yeah.
really powerful. And that was a big part of the shift, I think, is that she helped me start to believe that I could get better, because at this point I didn't think I could.
Yeah.
And then of course just like really connecting and like trying to understand what was going on with my body and the history of my issues, and kind of starting to unravel all of that kind of helped me get back to the point where yeah, I could kind of start to do some of the exercises that have eventually helped me get better.
So, as far as that goes, like, was that the first time that you really felt that somebody sort of connected those two separate pieces, like that orthopedic piece, the pelvic floor piece, you as an athlete coming into this, and then what you were kind of dealing with then? Was that kind of the first time that was even recognized?
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
um and again, it was, I think I got got really lucky because because I was coming so far. She scheduled me for like her last appointment of the day. And we usually spent like 2 hours together, which
Yep.
again, even if you're running your own practice not through insurance, that's pretty hard to do because you have appointments, you have a life. Like you can't just, I'm sure all of you amazing pelvic PTs want to spend like 3 hours with every patient because you
We
get
do.
rolling. And yeah,
We do.
yeah. And I just got lucky enough to be able to do that a few times. And
Yeah.
like that was what I really needed. So she did a combination of manual work, like just found some god awful stuff
Yeah.
like that she was able to work on. And so that provided some instant relief, which then allowed things to relax, which then allowed my brain to like reconnect with the area, which then like, and she was able to like really assess where I was and like fi- assign kind of not even exercises, but yeah, based on where I was, instead of being like, oh, you need stronger glutes, let's do squats. It's like when you get into a squat, you're doing it wrong because your brain is all confused. So like, how do we change your motor patterns and trick your brain so that you can even get into the squat in the first place? And that
Yeah.
is that kind of stuff that she really honed in on, that really helped me.
So, sitting here now, kind of having rehab for a while, like, could you explain to somebody, like, this is how I got here. Like this is my story of my body. Like what would that story be?
Yeah, the shortish version is, I think, um, how do I describe it well? I get concerned about, there's a lot of programs online that are like, do these exercises and you will get stronger, and
Yeah.
like doing exercises without any external feedback from someone who knows how they're kind of supposed to be done can be really detrimental. So like if everything is kind of working fine, yes, you can strengthen everything you need
Yeah.
to strengthen like without a ton of external feedback. And that's kind of what I thought, that I'm like, I'm an athlete. My body is working. Like
Yeah.
I can just do squats. I can just do single leg, RDLs, whatever. I can just do all these exercises and my body will get stronger and I will be able to run. But what I didn't realize was that my body wasn't functioning like
Yeah.
correctly. And so doing those exercises without, much external feedback meant that I was doing them in a way that was making things worse, actually. And I've had
Yeah.
actually other friends, not postpartum friends, have kind of issues pop up from like following programs like that type of thing.
Yep.
Um, and so I think I encourage everybody to like really get some, even if it's just 1 or 2 sessions, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be a PT. It depends on where you're at. Like the other thing that actually helped me is once I got past a certain point with Sarah, now I've been investing in one-on-one Pilates with this amazing woman in Oakland, Caitlin Smith, who's a doula, and I used to compete against her, and she's a
Ah, that's
Pilates,
interesting.
yeah, and she's a Pilates coach, and so like I've been seeing her once a week for, I don't, gosh, like 9 months now or something
Yeah.
insane, which like that is a financial investment that I'm lucky enough to be able to have made. But like that is the other reason. Like Sarah got me to the point where I could do that.
Yep.
And then Caitlin met me where I was, and we've been very
And
slowly
supported you.
progressing and
Yeah.
supported me. to get stronger in a way that my body could handle. But like
Yeah,
I couldn't even do a banded walk when I first started going to Caitlin
I believe
because
it.
it
Yeah,
hurt. Like just pushing outwards was
yeah.
like set my adductors and my pelvis on
Oh,
fire.
I believe it. No, it's funny you say that because I over the years I've realized that I think you can kind of divide people, and like you said, this is probably any injury, that a third of people, it doesn't matter. They're fine no matter what. Whether they get help, whether they don't get help, it's fine. A third of people will respond well to just basic kind of group programming. It doesn't have to be special, your kind of generic situation. But then the other third of people, they need that very, very specific, like very individual, this is what's going on with you, it's complex, and kind of to what you're saying, like you got that started with Sarah, and now you found like the supportive exercise that's going to keep you moving forward. But it's so funny though, because I mean, I don't think that's anything that really we're really told or taught or understand, or like do these extras. And even in my field too, like it's hard when you see other professionals, they're like, oh well, this is what I have for you, and if it doesn't work, it's your fault, like, which kind of sucks too, because then you're just still left there with nothing.
Yeah, then that's really interesting. I had never heard that kind of breakdown, and like that makes complete sense. And it's really helpful to hear that actually. That's like,
Yeah,
we'll try this. And like that's how I mean, I've been through a lot of PT and correct me if I'm wrong, but like a lot of PT, especially insurance-based PT functions in that middle zone where it's like, this is the program, do the program for 6 weeks,
yeah,
and if you're not better, then like
yeah. No, and that, I think, I mean, there's again, there's a lot of a lot of rabbit holes we could go down there. I mean, um I think lots of times when it's a productivity based practice, you don't have time or the interest to dive into that for a lot of different reasons. A lot of us do go out on our own so that we aren't driven by insurances making, those decisions, and you're able to spend time and that sort of thing. But then again, like, I don't know that everybody needs like my particular scenario. Like some people do just fine. And
yeah,
again, my whole well, it's probably like 95% of my practice are people that have gone elsewhere and realized, they weren't getting their answers. But again, how do you know that you've got this professional standing in front of you saying you're not getting any better? I mean, had you not written that blog, where would you be? Like,
yeah,
would somebody tell you, no, there's a next level here and that's what you need? And I
yeah,
feel like that's one of the threads. First of all, talk to a professional. But second of all, if you're not getting what you need, please understand that it's not just this baseline technician level. Like there's some of us that like, and funny, Sarah and I, we've never met, we're Instagram friends, but we think very much alike. Our background is very similar, like orthopedic, pelvic, that sort of thing. So there's those of us that can kind of put that stuff together. And I'm so glad you found her.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the message that I've been trying to put out there too is like, like no matter what happens, you should do a little bit of pelvic PT if you can make it happen after having a baby. Like I wish it
yeah,
was just part of standard care, but it's not.
yeah,
But like, yeah, and hopefully that's a little bit of that and you're good to go and you got no issues. But I think it's for the people who are still really struggling
yeah.
to kind of keep pushing and advocating for themselves and to not just it's really hard if like you see a
So
professional
hard.
and they're like, "Oh, you're not getting better. I don't know what to do." Like try finding someone else, try
Yeah.
experimenting. Like it may not just be like PT that you need. Like it could be this, like I said, the
Coach
Pilates
or
has been
trainer.
really
Yeah,
helpful. Yes.
exactly.
Or like a strength
Exactly.
trainer that can really get to know you and your body and the way your body is. But that external feedback can be really, really helpful. And I think it is possible to get better. And it can be really frustrating and take a lot of time. But it was Mother's Day yesterday. I did the and mother mom forward 5K. I ran it with my husband and my daughter. We kind of alternated pushing the stroller, but I ran the whole
Yeah.
thing. I was able to go for it a little bit. And I'm not where I want to be. Like I was hoping to be competitive this summer and I got COVID and all these other things. I'm like not very competitive right now and it can be really
Yeah.
frustrating. I still have some flare ups. But then I remember a year ago when I did the and
Right.
mother 5K, I power hiked it because I couldn't run at all. And like that kind of, it's like no one really wants to hear that it could take a year or more to get to
Yeah,
where they want to be. But at the same time, when you're in that deep dark hole, knowing that it is possible to get out of that hole, I think is
you'll
also
take
really
it.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for you, like if you had to look back, kind of knowing what you know now, what do you wish you'd known sooner?
I mean, I think I would have gone to pelvic PT had it been available when I was
Yeah.
pregnant. It like there weren't in-person appointments, and I think that it's quite a unique thing that hopefully we don't ever have to go through again as a society.
Right?
But I think especially as athletes and especially as endurance athletes, you're kind of used to discomfort. And I wish that I had paid a bit more attention to some of the aches and pains that I started to feel in the second trimester. Because again, nothing was alarming. I didn't get like
Right.
any of the like crazy things. But like I started to not really be able to lie on my side without pain in my adductor and my pelvis. But again, it wasn't
Mm,
like excruciating. And I was like, oh, I'm pregnant. It's fine. Like my low back started to hurt. And everyone's like, oh, your back always hurts when you're pregnant. But if you're trying to be athletic, I think those things are the things that turn into bigger things. And
yep.
so I just wish I had taken all of that more seriously and also been able to get care for them. So it's like I
Yeah.
probably would have gotten care if I could have, but since I couldn't, I just kind of downplayed them, I think.
That one's still hard. I can't tell you how many women I talk to in postpartum that will tell me that they had very similar pain to you, like pelvic girdle pain, pubic bone pain, groin pain during pregnancy, and were just told by their OB, "Oh, that's fine. There's nothing we can do." I had it very severely, both kids, and then occasionally, like once every 6 months, I'll have a flare up now. It's debilitating. Like and to know that somebody's telling you, "No, you just gotta deal with that." No, no, you don't. That's the part that's just mind-blowing to me. I'm like, we're sitting right here. We've been here for a very long time. Even basic, and this is frustrating too, having worked in orthopedics, basic orthopedic PTs look at pregnant women, it's like you've got a hex on you or something like that. "Oh my god, if I touch you, you're gonna go into labor." Trust me, they could not pry either of my children out of my body past, like, 41 and a half weeks. Like, "You can't do it. You're gonna be fine," but they're afraid to touch you. And that just drives me nuts. That like, people have the skills, they have the know-how, they have the ability to refer, and it's just sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that just yeah, you hit a button there. Alright, so for you, past self, future self, like, if you had to tell yourself anything, knowing we still have a ways to go, but I'm super like, I have so much excitement for you, like, going forward because I mean, with the exception of COVID, like, it can't get any worse, right? Like,
True. That's true.
how are you post-COVID, by the way?
I'm mostly better. It's been lingering, and I've been able to run about half as much as I normally was
Okay,
before COVID. I'm trying to take it really easy and not push it, but I think yesterday I started to feel a bit better in my run, so I'm
good.
hopeful that it'll
That's
continue.
that's the other one too. I do follow a good number of, ironically, they're physios who got COVID early on who have like post-COVID
Mm.
issues, looking at it as pacing as opposed to progression. So we're used to as athletes just like a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And sometimes these longer ones are saying, okay, see what shows up that day, and then you deal with that piece. So it's a little bit different
Yeah.
progression, but
Yeah.
hopefully that will also we'll get some better information on that more.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, what would you kind of like past self, future self?
Um, I mean, it's funny. I'm like thinking about what happens if I have another kid. Like, I
That
think
comes
it's
up.
yeah. Will I? I mean, it's a legitimate fear. I'm like, will
Of
I
course.
bring all of these issues back if I get pregnant again? But I think similar to what I was kind of saying in the last piece of just like really listen and and don't discount kind of those pains
Yeah.
or aches that your body is telling you. For me, I would take strength training during pregnancy like even more seriously and like more targeted. Like I did stuff and I always felt better after I did stuff, but it was kind of all over the place and wasn't really like specific. And I think that having, targeted and from an external source that can actually like
Yeah.
give you the exercises that are going to be supportive of a healthy pregnancy and hopefully easier postpartum is something I would definitely take seriously. And um yeah, don't be afraid to continue advocating for yourself and
Yeah.
kind of continuing to believe in yourself, because I think there were definitely several times where I had given up a little bit and
Yeah.
relied on other people to pull me out, which is also totally fine, but yeah.
Yeah. Now I get that conversation a lot when I see moms that come in after their first time. Um, and we talk about even considering the next pregnancy. And I would definitely recommend talking to Sarah about that one, because it's one of those things that I think you, you have to unpack and mourn, process, like all that stuff before you move on, because it's a part of it. It's definitely a part of it. Um, what I will say is I cannot think of a single client of mine that had a harder time in subsequent pregnancies for a lot of different reasons. One is you're just so much more educated, you're so much more prepared. You have a team, you have people that have your back. You've got somebody to walk you back from that cliff. Um, but you're so much more prepared in a lot of different ways to advocate for yourself, and everything that you're saying, you're like, I'm going to see this sooner, I'm going to jump on this sooner. But there's so much to be said, I think, to take the time to process,
Hmm.
because that fear is always, it's going to be there. You just don't want that to be the reason that you decide, not to do this or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
If you originally had planned to have more kids and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that would be my advice for sure. And then, again, sounds like you've got a great team, which is lovely. So you'd be like, all right, ladies, in 2 years we're gonna do this. So let's start.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very lucky that I found the people I found. It's a team of three, actually. I didn't mention Emily Noonan. So since Sarah is so far away, she connected me with her
Oh, awesome.
friend from PT school, who was much closer to me, so I could
Yep,
kind of see her for some manual work in between appointments with Sarah. And like the three of them all like communicated with each other and like,
yep.
I mean, got the royal treatment. So
That's
lucky.
the dream. That's the dream team,
So,
though. That's honestly how things should be, quite
yeah.
honestly, is to be able to have people that, and I grew up in a pretty rural area, that if you can't go far, you've got resources, telehealth, or you've got local resources, you've got training ones. It looks like you've got all the boxes checked,
Yeah.
which is super cool. So, um, one last question here. So, for you, like, what did it mean to you kind of when you were thinking about being a mom? Like, what did it mean to be active postpartum? And then kind of what does it mean now that you are a mom?
Yeah, I guess I kind of naively hoped and thought that I could just kind of roll through and that like I'd figure out a way for it to not be that different. For me, activity is like absolutely crucial to my functioning as a human being. Especially after going through 6 months of not really being able to do anything.
Yeah,
Once I started to be able to do stuff again, I was like, oh, I can actually like do my job, like function at work, like organize my thoughts. And
yeah,
I knew that there was going to be some level of activity postpartum. I had hoped and thought it could be pretty similar to what it was before. But again, after having that taken away and like now that it's back, I'm so thankful and grateful for it. It looks very different. There's a lot of negotiating with my husband because he also needs to exercise and like trying to squeeze in, the run or the strength training. I've bought a lot of equipment to have at home so that I can squeeze in some stuff like here
yep,
and there if I can't make it to the gym. But um, just finding a way to do even a little bit every day is really helpful and important to me.
yeah. And I think actually Sarah's fantastic with this too. Like, her kids, I think, are a little bit younger than mine. I think it doesn't hurt when you have a therapist that has been there trying to stay active, and you have to do the logistic juggle of who's got the kids, hubby's got to run, like that. There's a lot to be said to trying to get that set up, because once you get that set up, then you can actually just brainlessly go do what you need to do. But oh man, is there some hustle to get that set?
Yes, and a lot of 5 a.m. wake ups to be done before she wakes up, which yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the good news is it doesn't last forever. It seems like it does at the time, but no, one day they will sleep in.
I hope so. I hope so. I got a Mother's Day treat of a 5:15 a.m. wake up yesterday.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, my oldest, he did not sleep the first 5 years of his life.
Oh God.
Um, yes, he's now 11, and I have to drag him out of bed, which is great. It's wonder he has a sibling though, so so I can get my runs in before he wakes up, which is nice. But
Yeah.
and then for you, kind of like what's on the schedule for 2022? Like what's the plan?
Yeah, so I was hoping to do a few shorter kind of half marathon-ish distance mountain
Yeah.
races in the US. Training for something longer. I'm usually an ultra runner, like long
Yeah.
and slow. Um, but where my body is and just kind of where my ability to train is, like start small and build up to that. So
Yep.
I'm still hopeful. I based on this kind of setback from COVID, I'm not going to be competitive, but I'm starting off with hopefully the Broken Arrow Sky Race in Lake Tahoe in
Awesome.
June, and then there's a race in Arizona near Flagstaff, kind of in September. There's a race in Mammoth in September. So really, I haven't I haven't raced in since October 2019, and so really missing that community and
Yeah.
really want to get back to that. So it's eventually I'm hoping to get back to being competitive, and I've seen a couple little sparks here and there in training, but
Okay.
also kind of knowing I'm not going to be there right away, and but not letting that stop me from toeing the line.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we cannot wait to see what comes for you. We're so excited to see you back out there again on the trails. Thank you so much. If you want to follow Amy, she's over on Instagram at Amy underscore the Punisher. Thank you so much, Amy. I'm so glad that you came on and shared this other part of the story, and you've given us a lot of information, a lot of hope, and I hope some women are able to take this part of your story and use it for inspiration to get help and know that there is a way back. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, and thank you for putting the content you put out on Instagram. Like I found you probably I think because of that article. Someone said follow this woman and and your messaging was also really helpful to me, and then also this doing this type of podcast I think is really helpful for women who are looking for content to try to know more about how to prepare. So, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and we'll keep track of you out on the trails. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.